right. I think we're back. We're ready to go. Sorry for the delay there. You ever have one of those books, those experiences where you're reading a book and you're just chugging along with it, and before you know it, like an hour has passed? That's what just happened to me. Been reading a book. Let's see, what's the name of this? On the Kindle, actually. This is Marriage and the Family in the Middle Ages. And it's an interesting history book there. Before I forget, I need to pull up something here. Uh, oops. Let's try this. There's some. Sorry, there's some annoying sounds out there. That looks pretty nice. Yeah, I think I'll do that. All right. So, it's Workshop Wednesday. Hey, Yakushiki. Good to see you. And today we are painting more minis. Getting some more minis painted. I started on some last week. Like this guy here. This roguish fellow. Another traveler. So today we'll just finish up some of these minis. I've also got this rather nice white dragon that I'd like to finish up. I'd like to actually start painting. There's a lot to paint on this guy. So a lot of options there. Gotta play around with that. We'll see. And I'm just gonna go ahead and paint. I've also got this. So I've got, I think, two different. Let's see the other one. This is a sort of a winged creature. And might just sort of an angel type. Actually, it says on here, doesn't it? Oh, it's a Reaper miniature made in China. So it's just sort of an angel type creature. And I'll go ahead and just play around with how I might paint that up. I don't know. But point being, I'm going to go ahead and just start painting these up with some paint so that they are painted, which is I think a good thing. Okay. As usual, we get some nice glove on to cut down on the amount of paint. So Hyakushiki, good to see you. You've been watching any anime recently? This week I'm going to start delving into the anime of this season, but I have not done so yet. Actually, you know what? I've got a gloss black, which I think I'm going to use for the... I want to do some boots here. I'm going to paint a couple of different these guys' boots. This glossy black. Whoa! Come back here. Don't want to get blood everything. Lupin the Third Part 2 right now. Nice. Lupin's a classic, definitely. Let's see if I can get any of this paint. Yeah, there's definitely some paint. Actually, you know what? This is a very conveniently... Yeah. I can squirt that out. Hopefully I can squirt it out. Doesn't want to squirt. Okay. So there's some. And then we'll take some white and put that in. I've actually got a whole new jar of white. pull some white into the black, the glossy black, and see if we can get a gray going there. Yeah, that's nice. I don't want anything like a light gray. I want a dark gray. That's a good dark gray. And the gloss is kind of nice. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and take one of these guys and just throw some paint on the boot. And just cover the boot with this black paint. I need to give him a good traveling cloak. The traveling cloak might have a... Maybe what I'll do is slightly alter this gray and use that for the cloak as well. That might look nice. Oh, I should do the top of the boot as well. Kind of makes sense. So here we're just throwing paint onto the boot. Again, we're gonna get paint on the bottom. That's fine. On the base, that is just unavoidable at this point. Should I give him? Ooh, dang! 1 second. Got some paint on the guy's on his leg, which I didn't want. So it's now, I mean, it's not entirely gone, but it's now just a slight smear. That's fine. The Evo Rebuild movies. Well, fortunately, Yakashiki, you know, it's not like they won't be there tomorrow. The nice thing about the Rebuild movies is those will stay in print forever. All right, let's give... This guy has a lot of metal. I think what I'll do, though, is I'll give him a gray sort of undercoat. So underneath all that metal on his normal sort of pants, I'll just slap some gray in there. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kind of paint black all in the edges there, and then come back over with the metal later. That might look nice. So I'll just kind of throw lots of black all over the place in here. Yeah, Evo will never leave us. Evo is the gift that keeps on giving. In fact, its success surprised even Gygax. They did not expect that to be as successful as it was. Definitely a big deal. All right. Some more of these dark gray boots. Yeah, it's a nice color for boots. It's definitely a boot-like color, but a little weathered. You know, got that that sense that it's been out for a while with the gray. Yeah, definitely beautiful. Those Evo movies are impressive stuff. They just have all the time and money in the world to do their animation. So that's always the kind of thing that we otaku look for, is that level of skill and dedication, which often the industry just can't manage. There's just not the time. But Evangelion, Evangelion gets the treatment. And the sponsorship for those movies must have been crazy. Okay. So again, we've got our boots painted. Try to get all the little spots in there done. Yeah, that's good. All right, so there are those boots. I slathered her with stuff, so I think what I'll do now is maybe add a little more. There's a little black on there, which I hope I can pull off and introduce. So I'm hoping I can just throw a little extra black in there just to darken it up. No, I need more. Oops. Yes, I have seen Zeta Gundam New Translation. Definitely seen that. After watching the original TV series, it's very interesting seeing a very different take on that storyline, which was quite controversial at the time, and to see Tomino take a very different approach to it. Hey, Kuma! Good to see ya. Oh, thank you. Duh. You know, I opened up this page so I would do that. Okay. That title should be changed now. Durhei. Thanks, Kuma. And yeah, I definitely I like where New Translation goes, although it's not what I probably would have done with the story. But that's, you know, that is his prerogative. But I generally like what was done there. I think it stays true to the fundamentals of the story without completely wrecking what had gone before. Just be aware it has a very different ending. Dang it. Very different ending. From the TV series. Okay, get up in there. There we go. And get all of her boots. All right, so there's her and her boots. And then let's see here. Yeah, I think I'm gonna now go and add some. Yeah, I want to give him a lighter gray cloak. So we'll just mix in some more white with that gray and give it a nice, I think I'll go even a little lighter than that. Need a lot of white to counteract black. Oh, fair enough, Kuma. It is late where you are, so I totally understand. That is quite understandable. I'm gonna. Where's my so you can see there's a lot of lines on the back of this guy. So I want to go ahead and sand some of that down. I'll just use a sanding stick here. And you get some sleep, Kuma. Sleep is important. So for those not familiar, last week we started a little D&D session with Kuma, which we may continue in later sessions, depending on time, because role-playing is actually a pretty straightforward, fundamental experience once you experience it, once you get a sense for what it would be like. It's basically just answering questions. You know, here's the situation. This, you're walking down a trail, and you're holding a pitchfork, and this big nasty troll appears out of nowhere. What do you do? Hibernating Kuma. Fair enough. Alright, that's enough sanding for that. we'll go ahead and paint the cloak. That nice gray color. Actually a little darker than I anticipated, but that's all right. It'll work just fine. Make sure we get it all the way around. One thing to be aware of and to be careful about is it's easy to load up the brush and then get it all over the place when you didn't mean to. There we go. Yeah, I'll have to come back in and paint up his arms. I'm gonna get in there. Okay, I'm gonna get into all those crevices too. Okay, so we're starting to get a good coverage on the cloak. Yeah, I don't know. The original ending of Zeta is definitely one of the most remarkable, most controversial endings in anime. And so there's a certain purity, if you will, to the shock value of that ending. And the new ending, you know, isn't quite that. And granted, I think that is just that's Tomino having a different view as time goes on. I respect that. Many authors, when they're thinking about their work, later on think, as when I was a young buck and I was really pushing for certain things, I went a little overboard perhaps, or too far in one direction. And so that may have been what was going on there. But yeah, what can you do? So yeah, I can't say I prefer the old ending. I don't think I didn't really like the old ending. I don't think I was supposed to like the old ending though. I think the TV series ending is supposed to be shocking, and it certainly is that. So there's that aspect to it too. Kind of intent, author's intent, which I think is definitely a factor. But yeah, no, I think they're equally interesting, old and new, especially when you think about the implications of them. One of those things where you're like, that means this for this universe, right? So I think that's interesting. It is also interesting just seeing Zeta Gundam with more modern animation. Certainly early 80s anime, by that point, was not having any problems with budget, but also just things have changed somewhat. Okay, so he's now got a fairly dark gray cloak there. That's good. And now I'm going to add, actually I'm just going to go ahead and add the rest of this white into what remains of the gray. The remains of the gray. Which is pretty spread out now. I don't think I have much, there's not much actual paint left here. It's mostly just that. Yeah, I don't think we have much here. Let's see what I can scrape up in this spot. I'd like a slightly different color here. I'm going to add a bit more white. And if nothing else, that'll give us a little more paint to work with. What do we get? Yeah, that's nice. Much lighter gray. I think I'll just use that for this guy's kind of leggings here. I'm just coming up with more or less random colors for these. Just kind of whatever I feel like at the time. As long as it's a variety of relatively neutral colors. You know, don't want bright purples necessarily, but little, you know, some variation here and there is nice. And then, you know what, I'm going to go with that same color for his arms and his gloves, just for interest. Just because I want to. That's part of the fun. Is you get to choose the colors of your characters and such. Definitely have to come back and touch up these hand movements. Yeah. A little tricky getting in there. You know, often weapons I'll just come back in with a brown and cover them, because there's just no way to avoid getting a little bit of paint on them here and there. I've done a pretty good job here. I may be okay paint wise. Yeah, a little bit of the gray on there. We can come back in and fix that. And then need to get in here. Last little bit. Around there. And then same thing on the other arm. And there we go. I think that is that is pretty much exactly what he did to Camille at the end of Zeta Gundam, which is why it is such a controversial ending. Yeah, like you, I'm not a huge fan of that ending, but that was, that's what he did. Granted, Camille was not necessarily the most noble of shonen heroes in that show, so you could kind of sense that Camille was not necessarily going to have an amazingly happy ending, but the punishment did not seem to fit the crime, if you will. Alright, so this guy, speaking of bright colors, I'm tempted to give him like a royal purple cloak. I think I'm going to do that. But it's an ending that makes you think. Zeta Gundam. I actually disagree that with Double Zeta on that, because I think Double Zeta is, in a sense, Tomino apologizing for Zeta, because I figured Camille would just disappear, we never see him again, but instead we actually get a no spoilers to those who may not have seen it, but we do get a more satisfying, if you will, conclusion for Camille in Double Zeta. All right, red and blue come together to form very muddy color, but that's a nice purple. I'm happy with that. Let's try a little more blue. Yeah, very dark purple, but that's okay. He's a very imperious guy, so I think a dark purple makes sense. In fact, it's much more blue than red. And it's basically blue. Interesting. We'll see how it dries as well. Might have a big effect. I'm also learning not to try to throw all the color on at once. That you can just do it in very light brush strokes and get the color on in little daubs, and it's much more effective than trying to get everything painted all at once. Little subtlety, not a bad thing. Yeah, I don't know how I'm ever going to get the back of this, but also getting all over the rest of it. I may have to come in with something else. We'll see. Trying to come in here to the back of the cloak. That's kind of tough to get in. Oh, yep. I'm getting it on the. Oh, wow. Yep. So I'll probably have to come back in with the metal. Yeah, I have to come back in with the metal. Okay. So I'm learning. Painter's algorithm. That's all right. I'll do that. Okay. But I feel like I've gotten back in there pretty well. Yeah, it's one of the things I like about Tomino, actually, is that he is very idiosyncratic with his stories. You know, he is not there to tell you a hero's journey story, a traditional tale. He has a very different set of values and a very different belief in what makes an interesting and noble character. That's what I find so fascinating about his stories. Is that he still has the basics of the shonen formula, but it's definitely not your typical thing. That's what I like about Overman King Gainer, is that it's about these weird people out in this weird environment, and there's all sorts of politics and such that you just have to figure out as you go. I love that he doesn't over-explain things. That he expects you to figure things out, to spend some time with things. Should I give this guy a purple shirt? Now let's go a little more. Gonna add some yellow to that. Purple. Give it a brown. Yeah, Reconquista. I saw the first couple episodes of Reconquista, and I was enjoying it, but I realized it's definitely a show where you really should. You don't really want to watch Reconquista, episode by episode as it was coming out, as I was attempting to do. There's just too much going on there. That's an interesting sort of dirty yellow, and that's a perfectly acceptable shirt color. Reconquista expects you to be focused and paying attention. I'm not going to be able to use that brush. I'm going to use a more focused brush to get that color in there. Otherwise, it's going to go everywhere. Everywhere. All right, get that all over his shirt, and we'll make that a full shirt as well. So cover all of that. I think he might have actual gloves, so I think we'll leave those. Maybe we'll paint it. Just get up in there. Think about it. Just confusing? Yeah, fair enough. Same thing with Brain Powered. Very confusing. But again, I think that's kind of the point. I really want to sit down with some of Tomino's shows and really pay attention to them. Like watching a Kubrick film, where you really have to be watching and studying all the clues. It is not meant to be entertaining in the general sense. It's meant to be a work of art to be studied and thought about and discussed. Tomino is from that bygone era where if if you're a fan, if you're into science fiction and such, you are meant to be smart, and you were meant to be paying attention. And you wanted complexity and subtlety. So I think his shows, reward that to an extreme, often sacrificing sensibility, if you will, or easy comprehensibility. Not always a virtue, but I think that's where he was going with that. Okay, yeah, there's that kind of green color there. Actually, rather nice green. I think I'm going to use that for her backpack. Maybe. Would that be a backpack color? No, she should have. Those should be brown backpacks, leather. Who else should have a green? He doesn't have. I think his cloak's gonna be green. Yeah, his nice traveling coat. Yeah, it's gonna be green. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. But it's one of the things I love about anime is that you get these creators who are very much auteurs. They're doing their own thing, like Anno, like Tomino, like Takahata, rest in peace, like Miyazaki, where you are, you're not supposed to be, quote unquote, entertained by The Wind Rises, per se. You're supposed to study it and think about it and come back to it. And to me, that's interesting. Oh, okay, he's got the little straps. All right, we'll come back and don't have to paint the straps. Cool. I like having a diverse medium in the sense of all those things. Different creators with different approaches. And don't get me wrong, there's I like a straightforward, entertaining show as well. There's virtue there too. But I want a world where we get everything. We get lots of different things, different perspectives. I just finished watching Vampire Princess Miyu, and that's a very different story. It's gothic horror. It's creepy. The animation is pretty straightforward. The characters, the voice acting, all that, perfectly competent. Nothing to write home about. But it's those plot twists, those things they throw in there that make you go, wow, the implications, right? Where I'm not blown away by the animation necessarily, but I'm blown away by the writing in this case. That's cool. It's cool when somebody can do that, can make something that just really works well on at least one angle, in at least one way. Because making these things is hard. Getting everything to work right, it's really hard. I think I'll go ahead and paint his hands, even if I come back and give him gloves. Just give him some color. That's okay. Like I said before, I kind of like to have plenty of color on these things. You can always go back over and cover and get in all those little spots. Get all that detail. And I think I need to go in, yep, and do a little bit of this, a little bit of clothing around his neck. Yeah. Okay, I'll come back in and do kind of a shirt and pants thing. Cool. What about her? Let's see here, nothing really there. I feel like the angel should not have green. Green on him, not really. We give him, no. Go brown. He's mostly silvery stuff. So, okay. That's good on that color. Well, the other thing to remember is that, Tomino wasn't writing his shows generally. Tomino was more directing the overall structure. So a lot of those decision points, a lot of those plot points and so forth aren't necessarily Tomino. It's whoever's writing the individual episode. So you gotta be aware there's a lot of those story points that aren't really the director's necessary decision. He's kind of guiding the overall structure, and it's the episode writer who came up with those individual plot twists and moments, right? Okay, what do we need now? We'll go with the brown. I think these folks need a good brown. All right, I'm going to be right back with after I take care of these. 1 second. To that point, there's a fun little anecdote. Someone once asked Tomino, the team that made Mobile Suit Gundam was obviously a very special, sort of dream team. How do you construct a team like that? A team that can create something that amazing? And he thought for a second and then said, if I knew the answer to that question, I would have made 30 more Gundam quality level series, one every year for the next 30 years. This stuff is not easily replicatable as much as we want it to be. So, sometimes a team comes together and they make magic, and sometimes it just is not magic at all. And I think it's one of those things with stuff like Gundam, like a lot of these things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it's the fault, so to speak, of lots of different people involved in the process. And that's just reality. That you want something special and amazing, and sometimes it would have been great, but the director did this one thing, or the writer did this one thing, or the animator did this one thing. And now it's not so great. And that moment that you really wanted to sell, just didn't work out. That storyline, whatever. It's really hard to do. Genius all the time. No one's really able to do that. Much as we want. Yeah, no, I hear you, man. And Tomino's not without his flaws. He's I'm of a similar opinion that he's an amazing guy, but man, some of that stuff's weird. And it's kind of impenetrable to me. So far. And I do kind of hope that with deep study his stuff will be more understandable. But maybe not. Maybe it's just one of those things where it just, didn't all come together. It's a lot like Miyazaki, where his stuff is certainly far more intelligible. But he definitely has his own opinions on things and his own views on what people should or shouldn't be doing with their lives. And sometimes that's understandable, and sometimes you're like, really? Like, is that really what you're suggesting here? And maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me having different, political or economic or whatever opinions. I don't know. Oh yeah, and little straps. I can paint little straps. He has these little straps coming down. That's fun. From the backpack. Get that painted in there. Doo-doo-doo. Trying to get these really subtle little leather straps on him. I kind of want to get painted up. That works. Cool. So here's that figure. Kind of fun. What if Anno directed a live-action Gundam movie? I don't know. I think that was basically Evangelion. I think Evangelion was doing a lot of the things that Tomino liked in Gundam. Obviously with his own spin. Hard to say. I have not seen Anno's Cutie Honey. So I don't know how much that matches Cutie Honey. How much that feels like Cutie Honey. I suspect Anno is very respectful when he does adaptations. He was certainly very respectful of his and her circumstances. Like, that was a thing that did not feel anything like Evangelion. So I suppose it would feel very much like Gundam. Probably Anno just wouldn't, As a fan, I think Anno would try to be as Gundam-like as possible. Come to think of it. He wouldn't try to mess with a thing that he respects. Because Anno's definitely a fan. For all his, everything you can say about him, he definitely gets it. He definitely gets anime and sci-fi and all those aspects. All right. So we got that done. His weird little set of trousers. I think I'm going to go ahead and paint the staff while I'm at it. I think this nice dark brown color is good for the staff. I'll do his boots a dark brown too. A lot of the same color on things for this guy, which, you could say, well, it's a little boring. It's maybe right. But I think for this, for now, I'm fine with that. Huh. Interesting. Because that first episode of Origin, they certainly do not feel like archetypes. Nor throughout much of the rest of Origin, from what I've seen. I've not seen the last episode. interesting. I don't know. I mean, I'm not too worried. You know, Double O certainly did not feel like it was retreading Tomino territory. Nor did Seed, really. I mean, it borrowed some of the basic, plot points. But it felt like Gundam for the modern anime fan, and it certainly was successful in that sense. So I think they'll keep finding stuff to do. They'll find their formulas. But we have such a young medium. You know, it has outlived so few of its creators. And Gundam's such a weird thing. You know, there are very, very few franchises out there like that, where they're structurally like Gundam. So that's kind of weird. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that guy. Again, a fairly, see if we can get that to focus. Yeah. Got it for a second. Okay. What else? We'll give him, similarly, a brown belt and staff. I kind of like that idea. You know, it's kind of weird to think that, you know, all the major staff of Macross is still around, still alive. All the major staff of Original Gundam are still around, still doing their thing. Imagine that. So we haven't really had a big test of big anime franchises. You know, we have things, we have kids franchises that are still around. Doraemon and such, that definitely have outlived their creators. But that's not quite the same as Gundam or these others that are also like super, super, super popular. So I don't know. It's kind of untested on that kind of global sense. And I mean, who knows what fandom will be like by that point? You know, what kind of things will be created? Will people still be expecting anime TV shows by then? This staff is partly broken, so it might snap off as I'm painting it. In which case I'll have to glue it on. So I'll try to be kind of careful here. I'd rather not have to deal with that. There's one more thing to do, you know. Well, Double O was recreating Wing a bit, sure, but Wing was also not very Tomino-like. So, and I don't think Double O was recreating Wing. I think similarly as with Seed, Double O reused some plot points and sort of basic setups as Wing, but it is not like Wing. You know, it does not have the similar attributes as Wing. You know, the characters, all that stuff. I think it was making very different points. And it was about a very different cultural context, where Gundam Wing's main characters are basically terrorists, but the show never really inspects that as a social factor, right? The terrorism in Gundam Wing is not really criticized within the show. that you guys are terrorists. I mean, obviously characters bring it up, but in Double O, the terrorism aspect is a um, much more front and center, and the politics too. I mean, the politics in Gundam Wing is definitely a political show, but the politics are much more soap opera, whereas in Double O they're much more grounded and realistic, I think. So, like I said, I think they were kind of starting with some of the basic Gundam Wing concepts, but I don't think it is really. It's like folks that say that Gundam Seed was just copied its plot from original Gundam. It's like, no, Gundam Seed has the main characters in an aircraft carrier, right? And that is them flying around and sort of defending that mobile base is what they do, but the actual plot of Gundam Seed is nothing like the plot of original Gundam. The what actually happens is not the same. Same thing I think with Double O. And the thing is, I think, and you're absolutely right that you can point to Setsuna and Hiro as being similar, but Hiro is a much more fundamentally broken character than Setsuna. Setsuna is traumatized. Hiro is, Hiro is a complete mess. So again, I think they started there, but those characters aren't really all that similar, except in that sort of basic starting point, in my opinion. All right, so there's her backpack. Cool. Need some hair colors here too. So I think what I'm going to do is pull out some brown, put it down here, and then grab some white. But yeah, it's like how we talk about how people, go a little overboard with the whole idea of XYZ is just, stealing from ABC. It's like, not really. Everything is borrowing from everything else, so it's not really helpful to compare everything in that score. All right, we'll give him some nice tan hair. Actually, rather similar to the color of his shirt, interestingly enough. I'm going to give him a colored ear. I'm going to intend that, but that's how it's going to have to be. Whoa, my hand is shaking like crazy. Put that down. There we are. Sometimes you just got to put it down. Just put it down. All right. So there's hair on him. That's fine. Anyone else who needs hair? This is a rather nice hair color for the angel. I'm going to go ahead and give her light brown hair. Just for fun. Because I have the color here. I also got to look up angels. I don't really know what color scheme to give. Whoops. What color scheme to give her? Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying you are there, Hyaku. Totally not saying you are. Just sort of riffing on the arguments I often hear about these things. I know you got your head screwed on straight, so to speak. Yeah. One nice thing about these plastic figures is they've got, man, that plastic just takes paint really, really pleasantly. just sucks that paint right onto it. Anyway, the 3D printed stuff just, it's not formulated for that. So it goes on fine, but just not as eagerly as this stuff. Gosh, shaking like a leaf. Okay. So she's got nice brown hair now. All the little bits. Yeah, good. Oh, I loved SD Gundam. You mean SD Gundam Force? I actually liked SD Gundam Force too. Yeah, and I mean, obviously that's Miyazaki being a grumpy old man, right? This is how anime characters should look. This is the only right way of drawing anime characters. Is basically Miyazaki's point. It's like, nope, no siree. Miyazaki's a great, an impressive guy, but he's also not God. Let's actually lighten that up a bit. Yeah. Need kind of a light tan color for this guy's hair. Actually, I'll use that for his shirt. Ooh. I definitely don't need Tomino telling me, or I'm sorry, Miyazaki telling me how things should be done. The videos on the internet of Miyazaki eating ramen. That is a meme that has passed me by. I cannot help you there. That's weird. It sounds to me like people with too much time on their hands. In honesty. Just mucking about. It sounds like somebody is just like, well, I've got nothing better to do today. I'm going to post videos of Hayao Miyazaki eating ramen. Unless it's a Takahata reference. It could be. I prefer to spend my spare time doing stuff like this. And reading, like I was reading earlier. Got kind of distracted by the book I was reading. Didn't quite realize, oh, whoops. I lost track of time while reading, which is a very pleasant experience. Something I haven't done in a while. I'm not good at keeping up with reading as I used to. Used to devour books, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside with this whole thing called the internet, which is something I'm trying to change about myself. Do more reading, which I'm sure I've said more than once on here, but I think it bears repeating. I clearly have kind of an addictive personality around computers. There's a computer near me, I will be on it. And I need to pull back from that somewhat. Not fiction in this case. It's a book about the composition of families and children and so forth during the Middle Ages, and actually before that, the Romans and the German barbarians, about how all that was kind of structured for them. It's kind of interesting, again, for somebody who is interested in like D&D and characters and stories and such. Having a more accurate view of life in the Middle Ages just helps to make those worlds a little more accurate. And I like writing. I want to do some fantasy fiction one of these days. I mean, I have written fantasy fiction, but it's very difficult to do effectively. So that's something that I want to get better at, is understanding what life was actually like back then. Because actually, the view from history has changed. Like, there's more research that tells us things that you and I did not learn in school, either because school didn't cover it, or just what was known at the point when we were in school was wrong. Right? Just like we know more things now. We have corrected errors that we used to have about family life. You know, a lot of people believe that children were basically ignored and generally abused in earlier times. And now we know that's pretty much not true. That was more or less invented by armchair historians in the late Victorian period, who wanted to show how much better modern society was, and so they kind of picked and chose a few little bits of quote unquote evidence to bolster their point, and wrote books that ended up being, you know, highly read and highly influential. But when you actually study the history, it's like, no, not really. That's not what it was like. You know, plenty of counter evidence. Okay. So there's our little barbarian character with her spear. Pretty complementary colors here. Pretty similar colors. Yeah. Okay. And just about that. I'm gonna give him, I don't know. He looks like he's not wearing. I'm just gonna give him a dark brown shirt. That's just gonna be his thing. Actually, I'm gonna give him a dark brown shirt and dark brown leather. I think he's basically wearing leathers. Idle band, J-pop. Oh boy, yep, getting deep into various characters or various bands. I can totally empathize. I was watching all sorts of stuff. Yep, that is definitely an easy thing to do, and so I need to cut down on that. You know, like anyone will tell you, it's there's nothing wrong with it in and of itself. The problem is it's never in and of itself. There's always, you know, I'm always doing that instead of other things that I would like to be doing with my life. Okay, I'm gonna need to go and grab a toothpick. Do I think about publishing my work? Absolutely, but much of the work I've done is, whoa, a bit too much. Much of what I've written is not very well structured. The story, and I know this based on giving it to readers, and then reading and saying, I was confused about why this happened, and then this wasn't explained. I am not very good at structuring stories. Like, I can write prose in and of itself, but the this, then this, then this in a motivated way is something I struggle with a lot. You know, telling not just telling a story, but telling an interesting story is something that I care very deeply for. So I'm just not there yet. I will be. But I just haven't gotten a chance, haven't gotten the time really to finish any stories. I am very unfortunately somebody who tends to think up stories that are kind of novella length. You know, longer than a short story, shorter than a novel. And unfortunately, those take a relatively long time to write. Certainly more than a short story. So I have to, and if I get the structure of that wrong, it takes me a while to get it right. So I wrote a story about sky pirates a while back, and I've just been really struggling with getting the right structure in it, in terms of motivating who does what when, and this did this and that did that, and these characters are doing this for that reason, and all that stuff. So my beta readers have made it clear to me that I need to work on that. So, but the other problem is, like, when will I have time to do that and also keep up with anime? Right? Like, I need to also be keeping up with all of this anime stuff out there. There's all sorts of modern anime I have not seen. People are like, when are you going to watch this? When are you going to watch that? I'm like, well, after I finish writing my novel. So that's a problem, is finding the time to write and finish all that stuff. Oops. Okay. Cool. So here's Metal Guy. See if we can. I'm close enough to. Nope. Metal Guy. All right. So we've actually got most of these folks painted up. Oh, I need to. Let me grab and get in. So I managed to splash some purple on this guy, and I just want to fix that. I think I'm just going to go ahead and use a. I could just use a toothpick for that. Just covering up that purple with the silver. Nothing too complicated there, just do that. I like the toothpick for these operations where I really don't want to, break out yet another brush. I just need to slap some paint on some surfaces, and I can really get in there. It's just, it's convenient. I know I'm going to have this very small surface to paint with. It doesn't fan out like a brush, which is convenient. Get in there. It doesn't give you quite the control that a brush does, obviously. But for a lot of these sort of touch-up bits, it's convenient. All right, yeah, that's good. Actually, need some up here. His little epaulettes there need some extra silver. I think it may have just not brushed on well. This silver doesn't like to adhere to this particular plastic. Just for something about this this like brand of silver paint. So it could use an extra touch up here and there. Yeah, that's definitely helping. Good. Glad I checked that. That's definitely making it look more correct. Those little bits and pieces. Gotta use your eyes. Loads and books put on Amazon. Awesome. I actually did do that, come to think of it. I do have a children's fantasy novel on Amazon. Never advertised it enough. Armor, the name of it. Never really made any sales. Actually, while I'm at it, let me paint this. So Gao has a spear. Might as well paint the tip of that spear, right? With this metal. Now that I've got this metal color here, Just use that toothpick to throw some of that silver on there. And it's actually supposed to be like a steel color, but it's very silvery to me. So what are your books there, Daniel? Tell us about them. What are they about? Genre? Story? I'm intrigued. I've got so many books on my to read pile, but I'd love to, once I get through those, I'd love to start branching out to other new stuff. So much out there to read. Okay, yeah, so there's that. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I think this guy's going to have a lot of nice, bright, shiny armor. I think that makes sense. So let's grab a brush. And I think for him, I'm going to go ahead, do I? Nope. All right, time to rinse these out. Meanwhile, Daniel, what are your books? Got some clay here, which I'm going to experiment with in a little bit. But first, let's get some silver. 3 fantasy novels, 2 short stories. Awesome. In Portuguese. Cool. I'll have to learn Portuguese then, clearly. That's my next goal. Did anything in particular inspire you to make them? Favorite authors, favorite books, mood, desire. All right, so for this, I'm just throwing a whole bunch of silver, again, kind of steel, onto this figure, because he's basically just one big suit of armor. So I think that's going to work. And what I might do, almost certainly will do, is come back and dry brush on a darker metallic color onto there, and that'll give it some depth. Maybe even dry brush or do a wash of that. I just kind of like the idea that he's basically covered with metal. Makes it kind of a ridiculous but fun, over the top kind of a armored, maybe an enemy character, which is one big suit of armor. Dark fantasy, closed story. Nice! Earned enough to make a TV, to buy a TV. Not make a TV. Kind of hard to make a TV. I'm sure some people do it, but a little difficult for the average person. Yeah, this is interesting, learning how this plastic takes paint differently than others. I got these figures in a kind of a loot box kind of thing at a convention, where it's just kind of a bag, $10, here's some stuff. Sort of a grab bag. Actually, literally a grab bag. And it included these figurines. Unfortunately, his pitchfork is kind of sad, droopy. And I don't really know how to fix that, because it's just, it's plastic that's all bent. Maybe with like a hairdryer or something, I could fix that. So cool, Kakushiki. Thank you for the discussion. interesting as always. So how did you promote your books there, Daniel? Venture for Teens, nice. Actually, he's got okay, yeah, he's got like a skirt, kind of. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and ooh, that looks nice. Just paint up some of these details. So that skirt I'm gonna leave unpainted and throw in another color on that. Yeah. Oop. Helps to actually hold on to the mini you're trying to paint. On the back of the legs, yeah, he's got those sort of back of the leg guards. Don't know what you call them. Gotcha. So, by money mindset, I assume you mean that you knew that books for sort of adventure stories for teens would sell well, so you kind of wrote the book with that in mind, I assume. Makes sense. Get all those little bits of the figure all nice and painted up there. Think about our reviews, but I didn't like writing formulas. Yeah, fair enough. That makes sense. I mean, some people love it. Some people have no problem doing that. You know? Some people are all into that. It depends on the writer. I like formulas to a point. And when that formula can give me structure, great. But when it kind of determines how I tell the story, and it can certainly get restrictive. Certainly feel restrictive. All right, and I think he's gonna have a black staff because that's cool. And in fact, let's give him a black kind of skirt thing there. And again, let's use I'm liking this. We'll use that satin black. I'm just going to use that nice and straight. Isn't that funny though, how we all obviously have things that we like and things that work, and how something that sells well may not be something we actually want to do. Kind of the perils of success. You find a successful formula that just doesn't speak to you. Kind of tough. So what happened then? Did you just kind of stop? Third, you consider what's going to be on my last adventure mature and not as dark. Gotcha. So you finish it out. It's like that's don't want to leave the readers hanging. That makes sense. That's cool. Have you thought about going back and doing something different, maybe a little less formulaic? Not that that's easy. You need to do underneath, yeah. Do kind of the back of that. Underneath the... Oh, cool. Okay. There we go. There's his thing. Look at all these little spots painted. Then we'll give his very sad staff a coat of black. Perhaps there's a reason why it's drooping like that. It was cursed. You never know. One thing I like doing with tabletop and stories in general is if something happens I don't expect, or something gets thrown in that I didn't think of, didn't kind of plan for, and I try to roll with it as much as possible. Just incorporate it in. So this maybe this pitchfork is intended to be curved, right? Maybe that's part of its magic. Maybe it's a cultural thing where they have these curved pitchforks, these particular creatures, or particular guardians. Actually, I think I'm going to make both ends of that silver. Try to get the edges of it painted. All the little spots, so it's black consistently. Then we'll go back and add some silver onto the ends of that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll do that. That's kind of nice, though. Do I want to do... That's pretty good, actually. Has a little bit of his cloak, which is that light gray. So I don't really have any of that color. So what I'm going to do is fake it and have the back of his cloak kind of come down here. Okay, just fill in some details that maybe should have been a different color, but that's okay. So here's our shiny knight guy. Partnership with bloggers and some promotions. Nice. What kind of promotions? Like, Amazon promotions or other general promotions? Booked with other things? I know with Amazon you can kind of promote your own work and do exclusivity things. I think that's fine. All right. So I'm going to let that dry, then come back. Meanwhile... Yeah, short stories are certainly an excellent training ground for writing. I think all other things being equal, a novelist will do well to start with short stories and then progress to novels. Because with the short stories, you can iterate a lot more quickly and effectively. But that's not always, the way reality works. Okay. So, I'm going to do something a little weird here. I've got some Fimo, which is a form of oven-hardened clay. I'm not going to actually oven-harden it. But I'm going to use it here, and just to try, to see what happens, on this figure. Let me move some of these minis out of the way, just so I don't knock into them while I'm working on this. So I 3D printed this dragon here, and as you can probably see, there's some seams in it. Basically, I printed it in halves, and the print peeled up a little bit from the surface. So there are these seams on it. I'm just going to try, again, for experimentation, to stuff a little clay into those seams and see what happens. Yeah, promotion is always at, one of the sticking points, I think, with writing. It's like, I think most writers are not natural marketers, so it's hard for a lot of writers, myself included, to then switch into promotion mode and promote. So I'm always curious to see how other writers promote their work, what they did. Where's the other seam for this? I can't find the... It seems like it would be it. Okay, there's the inside seam. There's the outside seam. There we go. Okay. grab some of this stuff. Oh, it's very brittle. Oh. Well, see if I can work it. I'm assuming I can just kind of work this into something that's more usable. Let me pull off a bit more. I've seen people with this kind of stuff. It's just kind of breaking apart here. I'm assuming I can just kind of work it between my fingers. Wow, Hound of the Baskervilles and Hokuto no Ken. That's a combination. It's a combination of Agatha Christie and Dragon Ball Z. Okay. I think there's been a murder. And then someone gets hit by a fireball. Okay, yeah. So just kind of squeezing this back and forth makes it more pliable. All right. Let's see what happens here if I just pull off some of this stuff and try to squeeze it in there. Interesting. So I'm just gonna again just try to squeeze it in. Well, that's definitely squeezing in. I don't know how much this stuff will dry also. So I'm kind of hoping that after doing this and just letting it sit out in the air, that it will dry out somewhat, and then that means it'll take paint better. Because I really don't want to try to paint over a soft thing, soft clay. Soft things usually don't take paint very well. All right, so I'm just kind of smooshing the stuff in there. Timing, yep. Timing makes sense. Okay. So the good news is this is actually fitting into that seam very nicely. And because the front of the dragon has these ridges in it already, while you do have these weird lumps in the front, they just kind of fit into the overall theme of the dragon. So I think it's okay. I was originally wanting to kind of fit this into the seam, but I don't think that's practical. Oh, okay. I'm going to pull off that bit of that. I think instead I'm just going to have to kind of put these ridges on top of the seam and just kind of push that in. But I think that'll work. And of course it's hard doing that in between these other parts. I can, use the toothpick to push that down and get some of that off. Scrape some of it off. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, you gotta be aware of people actually reading it as opposed to just clicking it, just hitting that download button. That makes sense. Hey Matt, good to see you. All right. I need to get some more of that stuff in here. Hoping I can get that a little closer into the ridge. All right. Take these little bits of it and just kind of force them into that place. And I'm quite pleased with this. That might be, no, that's going to be fine. Now there's a ridge on the back, which I'm not too pleased with, but that might actually not be a too terrible thing. What I'll do, I think, is I will push some, I definitely don't want some on the neck. So yeah, that's interesting. Um, so you say always be in touch with your partners, make them talk about the book. How do you find partners? That would be the next question. How do you find other people who are who will promote your thing? All right. Again, I'm just sort of squeezing some of this stuff onto the neck, and that's pretty good actually. Just getting some of these lumps on here. As you can see, hopefully, there are these lumps of clay on the back of the neck, and hopefully I can squeeze them in enough that they will look more or less like they're part of the neck. Yeah, that's pretty good. And they're covering that seam. I'm actually okay with this seam on the back because it kind of feels like those ridges are like should be two sides of plates, if you will, because it's a very bony, platey kind of a dragon. So kind of like the idea that along the back it has this kind of double ridge of plates, and I don't think I could get that any better, that seam between them. So that's fine. There are some tiny seams on the legs, but I think those will disappear with paint. So cool. Yeah. So there's my dragon with a little bit of clay, and that clay did very well to cover up that seam. I'm very happy with that. And we'll see if we'll get it to focus in on that. Nope. There we go. So yeah, you can see how that clay. Nope. That's so funny. Like there's nothing else for it to focus on, but it focuses beyond that on the table behind it. So yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Ah, gotcha. It's always funny how influences are always more than you think. There are always more people influenced by things than you think there are out there, and there are you come across people who are like, wow, you basically, that's my idea, but you came up with that on the other side of the world 5 years before I did. So fair enough. Weird. Creativity does strange things. All right, so obviously I'm not going to paint over this right now because it might get, I'm hoping it will dry out. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Good to know. Yeah, Doyle is definitely a good place to start for a writing style. All right, so hopefully, and maybe next week, we will try painting up this white dragon, adding some detail and adding some stuff to it. Don't want him to be just pure white, kind of a white dragon wormling. This is 3D printed in plastic. So this is a plastic PLA printed dragon, and then just using the clay to hide the seams, which it did very well. Cool. I might actually. So let me try. There's a bit of a weirdness with the seam in the back, on the tail, which makes it look kind of obviously like there's a seam there. So I'm just going to add some clay onto that to hopefully hide that a little bit. Sort of scoosh it up in there. And we'll use. See if I can use a toothpick to just sort of squeeze it in. Not very effectively. But I like that. I like that creates a kind of a tail that's not obviously, yeah, that's much better actually. So there's that tail now with this lumpy bit added to it. You know what I'm going to do? Oh, hey. Yeah, no. I have control. There we go. can see now this tail and how there's just some clay pushed up in there. And that just makes it look all normal. And that, actually, you can see the top of it. That's totally 3D printed. That's just part of the 3D print, and it's actually quite smooth. So the bottom looks similar to that, and you can see. So there are those ridges in the back, and you can see why I'm actually fine with having those ridges stay as they are. I don't think I can actually fit clay in there, but here's that front of it. You can kind of see a little bit how that clay is fitted into there, but it doesn't look like a big giant seam anymore. So that's good. And then same thing with the back of the neck. Added a bit of clay to the back of the neck. And so you can see how thick that seam is there, and adding that to the back of the neck just makes it look a little more normal. Cool. Pleased with that. That's okay, Daniel. I mean, no worries about about your ability to translate live. I mean, I appreciate your thoughts and your views. So, are 3D printers expensive? This 3D printer costs $160 US. $160, and it has about a 4-inch cylindrical build area. So 4-inch there, and I can go a little bit more than 4 inches high, which is about 10 centimeters. 160 bucks. And it comes like this, fully assembled, ready to go. Now, it's reasonably high detail, but it's going to require a bit of maintenance, a bit of fiddling around, but you can totally, I was printing on that within half an hour of receiving it. It was printing out a little smiley face. So yeah, they've definitely gotten really, really, really inexpensive. You can obviously go up from there, but definitely the World of 3D printer has gone well under $1,000 US. Every printer I own is let's see here. No, I think the most I've ever spent for a 3D printer was $1,000, and that was years ago. Most of the ones I buy now are $200 or so. They're really, really cheap. Well, that's the thing, half a paycheck, sure, that's a significant amount of money, but think it's just half a paycheck, right? It isn't your entire yearly salary for a 3D printer. It's kind of amazing how cheap it's gotten. And a roll of filament is about 20 bucks. And that'll last you for long time. This is a tiny fraction of one roll of filament for a dragon like this. But yeah, it's gotten darn cheap. All right, I think that'll do it for us for this week. Thank you all for following. I think we've pretty much gotten to the end of the painting of miniatures portion of Workshop Wednesday. So I think next week we'll probably move on to some electronics projects. I want to build a rolling dice ball electronics thing. Work on some fun things. So that's a possibility for next week. I just got to check the bill of materials, make sure I have all the electronics for that, and we'll move on to some other stuff later on with that. So again, thank you all very much. See you next week on Workshop Wednesday. Until next time, make more interesting stuff for yourselves.